Ayman is here, Mohammed. Nice to see all of you.
Hi, how are you doing, everyone?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Not bad at all, thanks.
Nice. Good to hear.
Doing good, thank you.
I'm looking forward to meeting with you soon. I'll set up a time for us to meet this week, or maybe next Saturday or Sunday, if that works best. I think it might work best, and I'll put my calendar up and send you a note.
Perfect, Jill. Thank you for that. Looking forward.
Okay. Me too.
Okay, so I guess we can start if you're ready, and people can join us later. So good morning, everyone, or good evening for here in Cairo. Good evening, everyone. I'm Yasmin Hilal. I'm the National Project Coordinator for GTEX MENATEX project in Egypt. For the ones who are joining us today for the first time, GTEX MENATEX is a program, a global program organized by the International Trade Center. We work in 6 different countries: Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Jordan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Here in Egypt, we have this collaboration with a team of experts from the US who are joining us today for in this series of webinars. This is the last one of 6 webinars we have organized together since October. And I'll leave to them to present themselves and to start with the presentation. So Peter, are you the one who will start, or
Yes.
Okay, so to you, Peter.
Okay, well, thanks, Yasmin. And hello, everybody. Welcome to our, as Yasmin said, our final of 6 webinars. Today's topic is design and merchandising and sustainability strategies. So looking at some of the specifics about serving the US market and US customers. So as in our previous webinars, there's 5 of us. We'll be sharing the presentation. Frances Harder. Frances is a designer and entrepreneur, businesswoman who's designed for top fashion retailers. She's had her own brand. She's taught in higher education, and she's written a best-selling book, Fashion for Profit. Jill Mazur is an IT consultant specializing in the apparel sector with many years of experience working for major US apparel businesses. And Kristen Erdman-Burt is a specialist in brand management and marketing, specifically as it relates to apparel. Anne has worked with a lot of high-profile clients and actually launched, I'm going to forget their name again, Anne. Red Bull Apparel Line, yes. Globally. Red Bull Apparel Line. I want to try and forget that you were at Red Bull. Sorry, that's the subject that says, try and forget. And Meditha Senanaka is my colleague at Cal Poly Pomona. Meditha is a specialist in apparel manufacturing and supply chain and quality management. And he is the chair of our apparel merchandising and management department. And myself, I'm the former chair of the apparel merchandising and management department. I've worked in the textile industry, worked with a lot of companies, more on strategic issues facing the textile and clothing industries globally. So let me get us started. So today's topic is looking at design and merchandising strategies from concept to the final sale of the garment. Merchandising is a critical activity for the success of your business. You're telling a story with the way you merchandise your product line. You're expressing your brand and your culture to the customer and target consumers. And it's very important to do this in innovative and inventive ways. An important thing that I think we've stressed in previous webinars is using the tools you have effectively to best display your product lines. If you're doing it via the web, then you have to bring your product line to life in as realistic ways as possible. And as in all visual merchandising, coordinating products and colors, cross-merchandising products to mix and match and create coordinated looks are absolutely essential to attract buyers, retail buyers and consumers ultimately. So your store, your website, your catalog and trade booth, they're a map to guiding potential buyers to make a purchase from your business. Make sure buyers can easily find the products they are looking for and enjoy the experience in the process. So designing an attractive entry to begin an aesthetic experience, it's the shop window. It's your website, your booth in a trade show. These are your shop windows. We know that shop windows are designed to pull consumers into retail stores. That's what actually makes them change their path and go in. And the same with your shop windows, whether they're web-based or a trade show. And in designing these, you really need to be able to see your product line through the eyes of buyers and translate your visual merchandising so it works online, providing a clear structure to your website. A cluttered website, which is too complicated, that's difficult to navigate, you will lose customers. So having a clear structure, one that's attractive with filters, so people can drill down, customers can drill down into specific products they are interested in and looking for, to make a seamless experience and to make their decisions to purchase or pursue further information as easy as possible. So I think Francis is now going to walk you through some of the examples of merchandising design.
Thank you, Peter. And is Anne, are you clicking on or who is clicking on?
Yes, I'm currently clicking.
Thank you. Thanks for clicking. Okay, so as Peter said, you know, everything that you do as a apparel company is about merchandising and how you translate your look and feel. You know, obviously design, you may not be designing, maybe somebody's just giving you the designs and you're making them, you're cut and sew, but it's still, you still want to attract your buyers. And that means you need to show what you make, how you make it, how you put the products together. So that means you may need to do it in the most effective way when you're looking at it, so you can attract whoever it is that you need to talk to and hopefully sell to. So these are just quick examples. Johnny Was, it's a company that I work with, and they had it years ago. They really came up with this sort of novel look, and they've turned into a huge company. And I think that most people will know Johnny Was, especially in America. So, Anne, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, this is just another example about how you would show something that makes it attractive. Remember, everything is visual. The clothing industry is a visual industry. You want to make money, so there's a hell of a lot of business involved. But the first thing, you want to attract buyers. So what is the story you're telling to attract these buyers is very important for you, because as I said earlier, even if you're doing cut and sew, you still want to be able to show the products that you're able to make. So this was just a couple of examples, and we'll begin to talk about a little bit more. Thank you, Anne. So what is the role of a merchandiser? Well, you know, I was trained as a designer, and I remember working with a company, and the friend that I was working with, she was a merchandiser, and she said, you know, the merchandisers earn twice as much as designers. Well, I didn't know that, but I certainly found out that they do. So merchandising is an incredibly important role within the business. So how do you pull things together? How do you show the products? You know, we're in a situation now with the trends where they are so sort of hard to sort of identify, maybe a big shoulders in, but really you need to understand how to show and merchandise those products. So if you've got a sweatshirt or you've got sweatpants, are you showing them together, or are you showing the sweatshirt with jeans? Putting them together and giving people an alternative as to how to wear. So what else does the merchandiser do? They help with the line development. We do sit down with a merchandiser at the end of the week, go through the products. They would identify which ones we're going to move forward with, costing, maybe they'd make some other suggestions. So then once they've got that, then they'd have to think about what are the timeline and action plans. You know, how long is it going to take to get the fabrics there? What is the lead time that they need? So planning for volume, if, you know, hopefully volume will get back up. At the moment, they're obviously very much lower. Budgeting, costing the garments, making sure it falls within a particular price point, and whether you're doing your own line or whether you're actually producing for other people, obviously the costing is a huge part of whether or not you're going to make money or not, or whether or not someone wants to buy from you. So each stage will have an impact on the successful retail sale of a garment. So these are just one part of a merchandising calendar, detailing key dates for planning, selling, producing multiple lines. These days, you know, we're not doing 5 lines a year. They may be doing a line, a small group or a line, maybe once a month. So these are the things we're looking at. That the whole industry is changing. Thank you. So the planning process. Who's your target market? Who do you want to sell to? Alternatives for oversaturated markets. We are seeing, as we've got here, a mood board of, well, it's not a mood board, Anne, is it? It's your lookbook, right? So it's a lookbook, example of a lookbook. So you get an immediate feel of what is it you're looking at. You're looking at an active sportswear, casual sportswear. So what is the trends today is much more casual. So we're not necessarily walking around in great big high heel shoes anymore. It's a much more casual environment. So as we know, the market is oversaturated. The landfills are full of garments. So having a market analysis, current market trends, anticipated needs for forthcoming seasons, very important for you to really understand what it is that's being worn and sold. New fashions usually evolve gradually. The process by which famous fashions rise and peak and decline takes several seasons. You see it one time, you say, wow, that looks weird. Second time you see it, that's the second person looking weird. And by the time you've seen this person looking weird for the 10th time, then you're ready to buy. By then you're like, well, maybe it looks quite good. So suddenly you're wearing hot pants. But anyway, this is a trend. The trends, how they evolve and how they eventually will become in demand. First things first. So doing your market research. And so there is no universal group of customers. They could be city people, suburban, rural, young, not so young, blue collar, white collar, middle income, conservatives, avant-garde, or a mix of the above. The weather is also an important aspect to consider. So I always stress when I'm talking to people about, we may be talking about starting a new line of clothing and they're in Los Angeles, do you understand the rest of America? You know, you can't really say the US is this. You really need to understand the demographics of who it is you want to sell to. So you've got, each state has a certain type of look that, you know, I always advise people, have a look and understand the market. You know, LA is very different from Texas. LA is very different from Florida. I would say Texas and Florida would be similar in the buying habits. Of course, you've got Seattle, New York, much more formal. So having an understand of who it is you want to sell and attract to will be a very important part of your own marketing and your own merchandising skills. So again, do your research and know your market niche in order to know where you would fit in. Colors, of course, are very important. And again, this is also via demographics and in regions of where they sell. Hot colors sell well in hot climates. Cooler colors in cooler climates. So the first thing a customer will notice is the color of the garment. The second will be the fabric. You go in a store or you go on the web, whatever it is you're looking for, wow, that looks pretty attractive. And then you might want to look into it further. So color is first, and then of course your fabrications. People relate to color, prints and graphics, usually either selecting or rejecting a garment because of that. So if you have some weird print, they're going to walk straight away, even though the design may be fantastic. So you really need to analyze all parts, from choosing the types of fabrics, who are you selling to, and even if you are selling to, say, Texas and California and New York, you may be thinking, okay, we're going to add some hot colors for Florida and hot colors from Texas, and then we're going to cooler colors, say, for New York, and well, LA has a mix of everything, but Seattle has its own sort of rainwear look as well, more casual outdoor. So it's I lived there for 4 years, so I know. But anyway, it's another total different look and feel, but it's also something that your clients will want to understand, and giving them an option. Fabrication of a garment is the second connection a customer makes. Choosing a fabric suitable for a particular style is probably the most important aspect of design, merchandising a line. Of course, you need to make sure that you're choosing suitable fabric. If you're doing a jogging outfit, or if you're doing something more structured, you might be making a tailored jacket. Then, of course, you need to make sure you've got the right fabric that would tailor well, so you can bust the collars open. You've got your sleeves to fit in nicely into the sleeves. So all those things are really something that you need to be thinking about. It will then be important to merchandise the fabric choices, as I say, to use within the groups, and also depending on which region you want to sell to. Thank you. So here's some examples of merchandising. You get a sort of look and feel. Vintage cars may be an influence for prints on a shirt, or some part of a vintage dress could be taken as inspiration. There could be a floral or even space theme. We see designers who buy trend books and trend services to sort of see and get a feel, and it's worth an investment to look into some of these trend services that you might want to consider buying, whether or not it's your association that you could share it with you. I know some of them can be pretty expensive. So subdivide these sheets into groups that better relate to one another, fabric types, colors that would be grouped in style, and the trimmings that go with it. Of course, making sure that the trimmings and the fabrics are going to wash in the same way. This forces you to focus your design and merchandising, and this will help with sales pitches, of course. So having an understanding of what it is you're selling is going to be key to selling your product and selling your own company. Thank you. So another little example of merchandising, whether you like it or not, but it has a certain look. But it's well merchandised and well thought out. Maybe that jacket on the right could be worn with the skirt on the left. The top on the left could be worn with the skirt on the right. If it's two pieces, I'm not sure. So, thank you. So groups within the collection. This is something you need to think about. So you have an overall look, and then you subdivide it. So you might have a knit group and a woven group. Each group has a specific theme based on fabric, color, graphics, or a particular fabric direction. Sometimes the design for one garment may inspire a whole group. So you might have, and sometimes you might have one piece that is holding everything together, and you've had to adjust the pricing on that because there's been more work in it to bring it within the price point of that group. And sometimes we call it a loss leader, something that's costing more money to make, but it needs to be kept in there. So holding the pieces together so you can show the whole group. The styling within the group should have variety, yet carry out the central theme. And it might be just a trim, it might be stitching, anything that holds that group together within your particular styles for that particular group. To present a visual pleasing group of dresses, the line need only have a few elements in common. Oh, excuse me, my dog's barking. have a few elements in common, such as fabric type and color story. So this is very important for you to sort of understand how to place these pieces together. Are you doing dresses? Are you using that fabric from the dress and maybe making a top? And that's another thing. Sometimes people design something and it's, say they've got a short skirt. Why not make that skirt longer? Make the same shirt, giving it options. So you have a short skirt and a long skirt. Same with pants. You can have a pant to the knee, you can have a long pant, but the above part may be a high waist. So thinking about putting it together, it could be a pant group based on a particular silhouette of maybe shorter or longer pant legs or skirts, or if it's a dress, the same thing. Another thing I always talk about is dresses. So we saw that trend for sleeveless dresses for the last few years. Well, you know, I don't want to wear a sleeveless dress, but I love the body of the dress. So when you're designing, why not use that body of the dress and add a choice of whether or not it's sleeveless, or maybe it's got sleeves added to it. So you have the same style of body, but you're adding these different options. So thinking of pushing one idea into others within the group. Often manufacturing emphasizes only a few silhouettes. We call them bodies or styles in the trade, interpreting each of them in several prints, or it will feature one print or graphic artwork in a variety of styles. So that again, you could have a graphic artwork and you may want to offer it on a sleeveless t-shirt, on a 3/4 length t-shirt, or on a long sleeve t-shirt. Thinking of how you've got one beautiful piece. So think about how you can push that and emphasize it. You may take some of the graphic work and use it for a trim, maybe around the bottom of the pant. So you've just got to push your imagination as to how to hold your groups within your collections together. So we have an example of B2B order lookbook here. So you can see precisely how this is all held together. It has a central theme, and of course the styles of the bags are all different, but they have a central theme. So it's very important for you to sort of have that idea of how you're going to show yourself. And I know some of you will say, well, I'm not designing, but it doesn't really matter. It's about who you are and how you present yourself. So even if you're showing people what you can do, think about merchandising it so it looks attractive. More examples here. Sorry.
And
Sorry.
maybe I'm gonna jump in
Right.
here. What you see is this is for the retailers to order, and especially when you think of the digital environment right now, and you can't go maybe to a trade show, and they can't touch and feel your garments. Having a lookbook, and especially you see here, it's not photographed on models, but you can see the garment pretty well. You see the back and the front. You see the logo placement. You have the price information, you have what sizing is available, you have the item number. So having a clear document where your retailers can order, or at least if it's not an order book, that they can see what styles you have, or maybe it's what you have done in the previous season, and giving them an overview about the details can be really important. That's on one hand side, especially now during everything being digital, and where you maybe sometimes you are in a first contact with somebody and you are like, okay, at least I got the email address right now and somebody's interested in working with me. Maybe I don't have everything on the website, but I can send them a 5-page flyer, lookbook. It doesn't need to be 20 pages, but you can provide some visual inspiration, what you can do or what you have done in the past. And this is another example you see here. This is all specific to Red Bull in this case, but this is an existing photo of an athlete, and then it's just on white background, the back and front view of the garments, again, item number, the pricing. In this case, it's the recommended retail price, because as we all know, putting the wholesale pricing down is difficult. So just to give an indicator before you talk to the buyer in detail, what this could be retailing for. and that gives an indicator about the quality. And then we have just, yes, I heard some, oh.
And sorry, I just want to bump in here and say how you're showing against the white background is a really important point. And I've done many fashion shows, and one thing that people really understand is you will never see a fashion show with a black curtain, so, or a colored curtain. You want to show your styles. So what Anne is showing you here with the styles against a white background, it clearly emphasizes what the garment is. You're not distracted by the background. So I can't emphasize enough your website and how you present your lookbooks, everything. Show the garment. That's what people are looking for. They don't want to be attracted from looking at the background.
Thanks, Francis. And Mohammed has a question. He says, why is fiber composition not included?
Yes, that's a really good point. In this case, in this season, we didn't have it included. We had it in later seasons, but what also came with all the catalogs or all the lookbooks was always a detailed order sheet with also the country of origin, in this case, fabric composition. And also because this was for mostly our retailers, for them, it was really important to know all the details. So definitely fabric composition is important to show. And I see also the question if it is less important in the purchasing decision. In this case, it's a very specific example, I would say, because as all of you probably guessed, it's the Formula One team wear, where also the team is wearing it. So there were not many options. So there was not the choice, like maybe sometimes we talk to a buyer and they will say, can we have the same style in a different composition? In this case, we didn't offer it, but it's definitely really important if you can offer alternatives to add this on the site. I would maybe recommend having always to each page additional descriptions. And again, we always had the detailed order sheets. And then, of course, you have the conversation also with the buyers. But really good question. Fabric composition should be on it. Yes. And
can
Jill,
I jump in
yes,
very quickly?
yes.
Okay, and to that point with the fabric composition, I think one of the things we'll be talking about a little bit later is sustainability. And so more and more consumers are looking for sustainable materials. So when they see something like a lookbook and they're looking for potentially the fabric composition, whether it's made from 100% nylon or 100% recycled nylon, more and more consumers are interested in that. And honestly, more consumers are actually willing to pay a little bit more for those environmentally friendly materials. I'm going to hand it back to Anne now.
Now, really good points, because I believe also today, and these examples are a couple of years ago, you have to have like one hand side offering the alternatives on sustainable materials and also different price levels. Definitely. I agree that consumers totally like are willing to pay more for sustainable fabrics. And there's only two more examples here. And this is a B2C lookbook. What you can see here is you have also the item description, but then also detailed shots of the items. So you have the scarf first in a more mood picture, and then you have some details. And same for the jacket here. You have see the detail of the pocket, you see the trimmings better. So to really get an idea what you can do, and especially with like your specialty, if you're good in embroidering, if you're really good in printing, showing what you can do in detail shots, besides of just having the example I showed previously with a like front view, back view, showing how you can really get the message across can be extremely important. And I would say, even if you are on the trade show to give something or send it out as a PDF version, it doesn't need to have the cost of printing a lookbook. You can always have a digital lookbook. That's something really important and can also impress and show what the range you can do in your facilities. And the last one you see here is, this is the last page of a lookbook, and you can see all styles in one overview in one page. What is so nice about this, when we talk about merchandising, You want to see how colors work together. You want to see maybe how styles can go together, and you want to sell your whole line. You do not want to sell only one piece. You want to make sure the buyer buys as much as possible from you, to giving the messaging that everything works together, you can do, and that there's a, like, really, Francis talked about that there's a story behind within the collection, and it really works together, can help to also convince the buyer at the end. And continuing with that, I think this is still my slide. Merchandising for display purposes. We talked about, especially right now, trade show booth is something we all miss. We all miss going to the show. So you have to find alternative ways of displaying your products. But it's always, it doesn't matter if you are on a physical show or if you are digital, you must make sure the displayed merchandise relates in a way. And that's also when I showed you the last example, with seeing how styles work together. Even your photography, think about using the same backgrounds, the same type of maybe silhouettes you're photographing. Have a style guide when you like put all your styles together. Like normally we have a visual merchandising guideline, right? You need to have that basically also for your trade show booth or your website. So it also should be simple enough to be understood, and it should somehow, you need to catch their attention. And maybe it is like, if you think of a lookbook, if it's even the storytelling, how your line was inspired. And of course, making sure you understand what is effective will be critical to sales, means knowing what are the selling styles, what is the buyer looking right now for. So also when you style and create your digital materials or your booth, make sure you show your most important styles in the most prominent location. Here you can see an example of a trade show booth. I think like you normally have around 3 seconds to convince the buyer. There's so many trade show booths, and I want to emphasize again, think of Magic. Everybody who, and some of you went to Magic in this room today, how difficult was it to get a buyer even to look at your showroom? And that just shows you how important it is to have the right materials available visibly immediately. And that's the same in a physical trade show booth, making sure it is very, like, in the first couple of seconds, you get the attention of the buyer. So your graphics should communicate who you are, what you do. Also, I always emphasize in marketing and brand marketing, the emotional connection. There's so many, like, there's competition out there, but why is somebody buying from you? It's about also getting a connection, something they like, they can relate to. Who you are is extremely important, and this is relevant for everybody because you all are brands. You may be looking at the Red Bull examples or at other brand examples, and you are like, oh, but that's not me. I'm a manufacturer. But that's not true. And Peter and Francis emphasized that also in the beginning. It is really important. You are the brand. Your company is the brand, and you want to make sure the buyer relates to you and they get emotional attached and say, wow, I want to work here and want to work with this team because they are doing the best job, they have the best customer service, they have a story to tell, and this is where I feel comfortable working. So making it easy for people, of course, always really important, means also in especially digital. Think of like all the materials sent out, all the emails, like keep your communication super clear and clean, making sure the buyer knows in the first email what you can do, how you can do it, and how you're going to make it happen, and what's your flexibility. And continuing with that, when you have your retail visual merchandising, the arrangement and presentation of merchandise on the floor and the window is critical. And I'm gonna go back to the trade show also here. you have a window. What you see when you walk by, this is your window. And that's the same for your web page, by the way. The time you go into your homepage, your landing page, your first page of a catalog, that's your window. You want to make sure you attract the buyer the best. And that means coordinating and accessorizing your outfits. If you have props, we call them props around, means even though maybe you just have a scarf to sell, or you have just like t-shirts, or you are maybe doing loungewear or sportswear, make sure to style your items that the buyer gets an idea what the item can be, because sometimes just seeing it separate can be different or difficult to imagine. So definitely take the time to style everything. And this is just an example of a window. What you can see really nicely here, and what I love about it is the color choices, and seeing how they work together and how it can be, it's a whole collection. It's not just isolated pieces. So that's the storytelling we were all earlier talking about. And if you go to, let's say, Net-a-Porter or My Theresa, which are more like luxury stores, what I sometimes like about like going to sometimes higher end luxury brands is seeing how they do the visual merchandising and seeing how, like, getting inspired by all of that. And the virtual merchandising, we talked a little bit about that. You see here an example of a website. And again, even though you might not think of you as a brand right now, think about, like, you want to inspire when somebody comes to your website and show your styles, show your product in appealing ways. It is the retail window is your landing page and homepage. It needs to be super easy to navigate, finding your services. We've been working with most of you on improving or like optimizing websites, and that's so important, especially right now where this is your business card, and sometimes we are lacking the personal opportunity to sell what we can do. So this is even more important right now to get the visual connection. Also keeping it fresh, making sure if you have new photos, getting new photography in, make sure to just quickly exchange your photos to make sure if somebody new comes on, they see the latest styles you have available. And I'm gonna hand over to Mudita, I think.
Yes. Hi, Anne. I think there's a question on the chat. Maybe Francis, you and we all can jump in. What about the models? I see that more and more brands are turning away from featuring models with perfect physiques. From Dr. Mohammed Midani.
Yes. Francis, I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, this is true, and I'm going to be bluntly honest, as usual, that it used to be like a sizing. Sizing is changing. There's no real sort of grade rules in America. They've got bigger and bigger. I have a size 6 form, and now it's if you were to measure it, it would be something like a 10, maybe 20 years ago. So, you know, you've got this change of people getting bigger. So they have to show models of not only the perfect sizing, but also in various sizing to attract other people to want to buy them. Otherwise, they're not going to, you know, if you're a size 12 and you're looking at a model who's a size 2, you might sort of feel intimidated by wanting to buy that. So, of course, they have to adapt to what is happening within the marketplace. So showing them in different ways. And I love this example on the lower right, the fact that you've got the models in short skirts and long skirts and sleeves and without sleeves. So it's showing you a similar nice body of a dress, but it's also giving you an alternative of how you can adapt it and make it wear. So yeah, models can be shown in different sizes these days, and that's the way it is. You know, not everybody's perfect, unfortunately.
And I maybe also want to add something here. What a lot of brands go for is not even showing faces at all. So just showing different body sizes, but not photographing any faces, because it can be polarizing at all, depending. So I think it's about depending also what you sell, being smart about, do I even need to choose a model, show them fully? Because as soon as the consumer or buyer, they might connect in some way, if it's negatively or positively, you see that there's a 50-50 out there. Some brands are having the models shown with faces, some are not. But I totally also agree with Francis said, showing the different body sizes, especially in online shopping right now, is essential. And also then writing what size is the model wearing to give an idea how the fit of the garment is.
Yeah, and you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Please, thank you. So I think it also, this discussion drives me right into my point. I can probably start answering this question also. There are a lot of companies actually, fairly bigger companies actually started using the assets, we call it digital assets in product development. So they are using avatars and actually put the digital garments on the body and take pictures, and they remove the avatar because the technology provide that. And that actually leads to these assets that can be shown on retail and or in the product development, production or merchandising process, so that you can actually show these garments in digital format. So that actually allow to get rid of expensive models wearing and imaging and taking photographs and videos and so on and so forth. So I guess we answered your question, Dr. Mohammed, and then I'll probably start talking about this slide. So we heard a lot of strategies in merchandising. And I always like to, I'm sure you all have heard about lean manufacturing. We were concentrating on manufacturing and manufacturing and manufacturing. Now that was a problem in our industry. We concentrate on one area and we are not trying to bridge all the areas. So now we are talking about micro merchandising, lean merchandising, on-demand merchandising. I think we heard about on-demand manufacturing, but we did not hear about on-demand merchandising. How can you manufacture on demand if you don't do on-demand merchandising? Now, this is where companies like Zara, you can turn around things in 2 weeks. How do you do that? That is through these techniques or strategies of lean, right? We all talked about lean manufacturing. We learned Lean Six Sigma. Are we applying lean systems to merchandising? We have to. So that is a big strategy. I think people are now understanding that we have to apply these strategies into merchandising and design and merchandising. Merchandising is all about the full cycle, right? It's the design, development, production, and delivery of the product. And then of course, also it goes to the retail, right? So if you consider manufacturing plants, we have heard this lean the merchandising strategies to deliver the right product in the right quantities at the right time to meet the buyer demand and maximize sales, minimize out of stocks. So this is the definition, right? This is the definition. Now, how do you do that? We have done that in the past when we have big orders, 100,000 garments in an order or 50,000 garments in an order, and we have 1 year to do that. Yeah, we can do that. But now how can you do that in 2 weeks? Then we have to apply these strategies, right? So we can't forget digital technologies when it comes to lean merchandising, lean manufacturing, right? Now, why it is important? Because the digital technologies actually provide the capability of replacing the human work, right? And save that for a long term and reuse it, right? Recycle, reuse. So this is sustainability we are talking about if you really think of it, right? So the digital technologies have to be used in order to do on-demand merchandising, on-demand manufacturing. And of course, we have to use the planning and all the other systems because because we cannot have people doing that. Whenever a person is absent, we cannot say that, oh, the person is absent, we can't have that. So we have to have these systems in place for communication, for ordering, and all sort of functions in the supply chain. So you need that, right? And then we call it now the product assets. The assets are the product related information that we developed from the product design, development, that can be reused in multiple places, in multiple levels, in production, in retail. So that has to be, these assets have to be reused, right? So that the digital technology actually provide that capability to use these assets in multiple levels in our business, in the supply chain. And now with the improved 3D sampling, which simulates the true to life draping, we are getting closer and closer to actually see 3D draping, which is true to life, right? In the past, we did not, we saw them as like, you know, some avatars, which are kind of awkward. But now with the technologies, the digital technologies, it is becoming more realistic. Now you can see, actually, sometimes you can see these avatars, you can't recognize whether it's a real model or an avatar. So we are getting much more closer to true to life visualization of 3D draping, fit, visualization, and using this technology in multiple places of our supply chain, from merchandising, for retail, for lookbooks, for advertising, for marketing, for promotion. So we are using this, and we have to use that. Now that will provide the capability of lean merchandising. Enterprise resource planning, you can call it, sure.
Sorry, you have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Mohammed Nabawi is asking, what is the best practice of applying lean into merchandising? For example, what is Zara doing?
Yeah, so it's the modules, right? So you develop modules and use these modules as and when you need it, right? You save it as digital modules and use it, right? So this is the micro merchandising concept from the point of view of a manufacturer, right? So you need, whenever you need to do this in small modules, right? You use the small modules. So what you're trying to do is, say, for example, in design, let's say patterns, right? So let's say you're making a blouse and you're not going to reinvent the whole pattern because you have a digital blouse library. You take a blouse, you real quickly, within a couple of minutes, you can change the style lines, you can add pockets, remove pockets, add epaulets, remove buttons, add buttons, change the colors of fabrication, prints, and so on and so forth. So you have image modules, you have pattern modules. These are the assets that you're trying to mix and match and reuse it real quickly, and then show it to a buyer. If the buyer likes it, you are ready to move into the next level of production and then delivery, right? So so that's the modular manufacturing. If you take modular manufacturing and apply modular manufacturing into merchandising, that is the lean or modular merchandising. I call it that way. That's my definition. I'm sorry, but it is not in books, but that is what I interpret the modular merchandising as, and how you can do the things and get things done faster. I hope I answered your question, but we can discuss this more when it comes to the question and answer session. So enterprise.
Well,
sure.
sorry, there's
I was going to say, it sounds like there are some questions about technology in terms of what technology you would want to use
right.
with the software. And yes, so there are different types of, and Muditha, sorry for me jumping in, but that's
Sure,
kind of my area. So there are a number of different types of software applications that can be used. And I see a note down here that say that these are very expensive, and some of them can be, but things like Adobe Illustrator, the Adobe suite of creative tools is now online and subscription based. So for things, I'll say $30 US or $50 US per month per user, you can have access to one or more of these Adobe Illustrator tools, which is great for 2D design. Images, which can be used on websites, can be used on marketing materials, can be used throughout your supply chain. And then in terms of other types of software that you would use, many companies use product lifecycle management systems, PLM, to design, develop, and commercialize styles, including the images that go along with it, and can be used to produce line sheets, visual tools for sales and for marketing and merchandising. And then in terms of 3D, yes, 3D is expensive. I won't say it that it isn't. But even those 3D images, whether it's the 2D images, two-dimensional images, I should say, from Adobe, or 3D images from companies like Clo and Browseware that are specific for the apparel industry, can integrate with pattern making tools. So you can import a pattern. It can create a 3D image of the pattern. It can also apply 3D renderings of materials and fabrics on that for draping purposes. And a lot of companies are using these types of tools in order to reduce their sampling costs and to make better decisions about the products that they're presenting without ever having to actually commit to producing any of these goods. So I'm hoping that might answer some of those questions.
Sure. Thank you, Jill. And I think also, I think we can discuss this more, but a lot of companies are actually moving into subscription-based services. So I know we are working with TUCATech. They are into more subscription-based. You can rent. I mean, our students actually rent the TUCACAD 2D suite, the licenses for like, I think $35 a month or something, or $75 for 3 months. So there are a lot of these technologies are going to be on subscription based, but they are also in development. I know some of these files are very heavy in order to actually deliver through online space in the sense like cloud-based. But I think the companies are investing heavily on trying to do that online so that, with some cloud servers or whatnot. Definitely, as Jill said, like Clo 3D, actually they offer free trials, there are new companies coming up in order to make these things actually really true to life. I just met with the company called Vizu this week, and they are trying to actually scan fabrics. And they have a software where they are trying to provide the texture of the fabric so that you can drape it on. You can see the drape true to life, right? Because we know that there are a lot of fabric mechanics that play involved in the formula for draping, and so there are a lot of companies actually working on it, and they have scanners and so on and so forth. Just to go back to the slide, enterprise resource planning to integrate in multiple levels of the supply chain. It can be enterprise ERP, it can be PLM, PDM, whatever you call it. It's very important because there's no time for anybody to make a call anymore with the 2-week cycle of a product life cycle, right? So things should be communicated readily available in the supply chain for those people who are responsible for their jobs at multiple stages and bring the product to the market. And I saw Ada asking a question in the chat. Let me go back to that and see. Do you mean that the merchandiser is the one who is responsible of the profile and the profits in retail? I will let Francis and others talk, but let me provide a point first, right? Your success, the merchandiser in the factory, the success of the merchandiser in the factory is the success of the company, because at the end of the day, the buyer buys from you. And if the buyer can sell it to the customer only, your business will be profitable, right? If not, the buyer is not going to buy from you if that product is not profitable. So you are part of this chain, right? You are part of this whole, the big chain, and you are responsible, in my opinion. Francis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the merchandising in general, and I think maybe this should be emphasized, Ada, is that merchandising encompasses all your company story. So a merchandiser's job, professional job, is to make sure that the garments that are made relate to what they want, who they want to sell to. So, and that is their job, and of course that's why they get paid good money. That applies to making sure that the garments that are made fit within the price points of the customers who are buying from them, and making sure that you, the manufacturer, makes money, and also the retailer will realize a profit as well. So merchandising is like a whole of your company, and a merchandiser within your company is somebody who is in charge of merchandising the goods to show the goods in the best way and to show your company in the most effective way. Anne, have you got anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it all definitely in Mudita as well.
Yeah. So let's, of course, the last point is the ERP. As I mentioned, there are a lot of PLM and PLM systems. ERP is very common, I think, and it's all about connecting the dots in the supply chain and making all the information available whenever you need it in order to make decisions as fast as you can, because there's no time to lose. Your supply chain is compact now. The product development calendar, the production calendar, the merchandising calendar is very compact. So there's everything what we need should be available whenever it is needed in order to make decision and move on. And that is how companies like Zara is successful in doing that. So we have a lot to learn from reading the case studies of these companies. And I would definitely encourage you to take a look at it and read them and try to adopt as much as you can. So let's go to the next slide, because I really would like to emphasize this one. So there are consumers who are willing to pay a little more for your product. And this is for sure real whenever it comes to customization and personalization, which is a research area that I'm really interested in. And there are a lot of consumers are very they're thinking of sustainability. They're thinking of the world. They're thinking of the globe. They're thinking of how we can save the earth. And as you can see, 40% of the consumers place some level of importance in the eco-friendly products, right? But price is very important. As soon as the price goes up, sometimes you will lose the sale, right? So it's very important. However, there are people like that. Now, 80% of consumers are concerned with water pollution reduction, water energy conservation, and or animal welfare. So again, another data point that tells us that this is important, right? Sustainability is important. 30% of the consumers are aware of sustainable apparel material products. So materials, right? Fabrication, they are important. Consumers need more understanding of sustainable products and practices, labeling, social media, brand awareness, right? So what can we take out of this slide? What can you learn out of this slide? In merchandising. So that means sustainability is important, right? And consumers are going to purchase your product if you have some sort of assets in your merchandising plan, right? In your merchandise, in your goods. Right.
So, I'm going to jump in here for just a second. Anne, if you want to flip to the next slide, this actually would very much talk about that point, Mudita, which is this company called Everlane in San Francisco that is all about sustainability and all about transparency in their supply chain.
Right. So let me hand it over to Jill, but give me a minute or two, because I just want to emphasize, okay, everybody talks about sustainability, right? And we are talking about merchandising strategies. So as a manufacturing company, right, whether CMT or brand or whatever, what can you, if you go back one slide and just back to this. So as a company, what is your strategy, right, in your merchandise? What is the strategy? What can you do? What can you think of this, right? So you have consumers, customers, right? You're supplying to a buyer. However, that buyer is supplying to the end consumer, right? So if you can suggest some way of sustainable manufacturing, forget about everything else, right? If you can save fabric, you are part of the sustainable chain, right? Are you thinking of that in your cutting room? Can you save fabric? You're talking about market efficiencies, right? And how many of us we know in manufacturing, right? Even though we can cut a corner and reduce 1% or a 0.1% in the market efficiency, because of the time pressure, sometimes we just, there's no time to draw another marker, let's move on, right? So what I just want to bring onto the table is, are we thinking of sustainability, or is it like you're thinking, oh, you know what, sustainability is very difficult for us to achieve? But if we are saving something, even as small as fabric, that you are actually part of the sustainability chain. Now, are you actually saying this to your buyer? Most of the time not. I'll bring one quick example in my experience in my life. When I was working for a company, lingerie company, right? This was the time where nanotechnology was coming up. We applied nanotechnology-based finish in order to improve the moisture management function of a fabric for a sports bra. However, for some reason, we could not deliver the message in a label or a tag to the consumer about the moisture management capability of that fabric, even though we paid 25 cents for the yards that is used in that fabric. Of course, to make a bra, you don't need a lot of yards, right? Even for that particular area of the fabric that we use for the bra, we paid 25 cents extra. However, we did not deliver that message to the consumer. The consumer did not know that this particular bra has a moisture management capability, which we paid for additionally, right? If they don't know, they will not pay a premium price. So what I'm trying to say is, sometimes we do a lot of things, but we do not tell this to the buyers or the consumers. As a manufacturing company, you need to tell this story, right? And that is merchandising. It is nothing else. You have to tell the story. What you do, you have to tell them. Then they will like you and they will purchase from you. Okay, so I'll let Jill jump into sustainability and manufacturing.
So thank you, Maditha. That's a really good point. So as Maditha was saying, is companies will invest in technologies, companies will invest in sustainability, but if you can't communicate that to your consumers, you can't communicate that to your customers, it's very challenging. That's an investment that may just sort of not pay off. So I just wanted to bring up very quickly a company that's based in San Francisco, and they are all about what they call radical transparency. They actually even have costing, the actual cost of goods of their garments on their website for everybody to see how much it costs them to produce their goods, what their profit margin is, and so on, as well as stories about the factories that they work with. They're so invested in the relationship with the factories that they have, that they actually do put information about their factories and the factory sustainability as well. And so this is just an example here about the website, and that they are talking about sustainable products with organic cotton and denim, re-cashmere, which is where they take cashmere fibers from existing sweaters and blend it with a small amount of wool to knit it again and to turn it into new products. And Forever sneakers, which are made out of regenerative materials that they can actually disassemble at the end and turn into new products, as well as organic cotton. And I know some of you are very focused on the organic supply chain, and I want people to know that it is important and consumers are looking into it and are willing to pay a little bit more. And if we can go to the next slide. So what does that mean for manufacturing? So we've talked a lot about merchandising, we've talked a lot about products, but what does it mean for manufacturing? So are factories or companies like yours willing to invest more if it means a cleaner footprint? And honestly, most factories, especially in China these days, are not necessarily willing to invest into their factories unless they feel that there's a return on an investment. And I would imagine that your factories are probably the same. But what are some of the things that companies can do today to reduce energy usage, to reduce water consumption, to reduce chemicals that are put into the environment? And so here are a few items regarding solar power, reclaiming and reusing water, reducing solvents in terms of dyes as well, using non-toxic and biodegradable dyes, adhesives, chemicals, and with leathers using chrome-free tanning. So there are companies out there that are actually helping factories implement sustainability in their supply chain. But again, it's whether or not you're willing to invest in that at the moment. And next slide, please. So what can you do? Even now, just if you want to take directions in terms of sustainability, you don't necessarily want to make huge investments in your company. You can at least begin to start to measure your waste, to see what it is that you're wasting in terms of fabrics, fibers, energy, water, and so on, and start thinking of ways that you can reduce that. There are probably service providers in your countries that can help provide information in terms of how we are, what they're doing in terms of reducing waste, in terms of reducing emissions. In the States, we have a lot of environmental regulations that we have to follow, and they get stricter and stricter every year. So it's important for factories in the US to conform to that. And in terms of the rest of the world, I think people are starting to follow along to that as well. Let's see. So one of my favorite ones is reducing air freight. That's not necessarily easy to do, but if you are able to follow a more streamlined production schedule, hopefully you're getting to the point where you can get to your deliveries to your customers on time without having to rely on air freight. That cost is usually passed on to the brand, but anytime we can stop air freight, it's much better, saves a lot of energy, saves a lot of pollution. And then on-demand manufacturing. So I know Muditha has talked about that as well, but it's easier said than done. Somebody did bring up TUCATEC earlier, and TUCATEC has done a lot with on-demand manufacturing and setting up lean manufacturing in factories. Mohammed has a question about social. So yeah, I think the social part about sustainability is incredibly important. Your consumers are looking for more sustainable products. They're looking for ways to save raw materials, save on energy, reduce waste, reduce pollution. And more consumers are, as Muditha mentioned in the NPD survey, are willing to pay more, at least a small amount more, for products that meet that requirement. And if we could go on to the next slide. So I think I have a couple of graphics here. So essentially, sustainability in merchandising is sustainable manufacturing, making environmentally friendly products. Environmentally friendly products does lend itself to premium pricing, which is okay if the consumers are aware of that and what they're paying for, and also being able to use alternative materials. So if we move to the next slide, I have some conversations or some information about sustainable materials. So next slide, please. So there's 4 different types of sustainable materials. So there are what we call recyclable materials. So things like plastic bottles, car tires, coffee grounds, those are all recyclable. And when I think about coffee grounds, it makes me laugh because several years ago, I worked for a sportswear manufacturer, and one of their big selling points on their product was that their sports bras were made with recycled coffee grounds. And I thought, that's so interesting. I hadn't heard about that before. And I thought, who would recycle coffee grounds? And now it's quite prominent in the industry to use recycled coffee grounds as a material. There are renewable materials, which, wool, cotton, beans, algae, sugarcane, things that are growing from the earth that can be renewed on a regular harvest basis. And people are putting more energy into creating organic materials, using only organic products and making sure that they are following all of the criteria to could be certified as 100% organic. And then we have recycled materials. So you saw just a few slides ago where we were talking about recycled cashmere, where companies are taking cashmere from sweaters or other cashmere made products. They are pulling the fibers out. They are adding small amounts of wool to it, and they are making recycled cashmere, recycled wool, even recycled cotton in some respects. And then regenerative. So some of you are aware that there are companies out there now that are taking materials from the ocean. So one of the bigger companies is called, one of the bigger materials is called EcoNil. And that's from nylon that is being pulled out from old fishing nets and from carpet. Nylon is one of the few materials that actually doesn't degrade. Certain types of nylon doesn't degrade. So when they take the nylon, they're able to extract all the chemical properties from nylon and regenerate brand new nylon from that, making high-end swimwear. Prada is using it for a lot of their bags. I know that a lot of surfwear companies are using this regenerated nylon and EcoNil in their products. I know the company I'm working with, Speedo, makes a lot of their swimwear out of this fabric as well. You can do this, something very similar with polyester and viscose, rubber, all of those types of materials. But by far and away, the most sustainable material of all is dead stock. So if you have dead stock sitting around in your factories, so fabric that you haven't been able to use for whatever reason, whether it is that you choose to try to make new products and merchandise new products out of that, or even just selling your dead stock to other companies that are looking to manufacture using fabrics that are already in the marketplace, that is one of the most environmentally friendly processes of all. So I'll go ahead and hand this off to whoever's next. Peter.
That's me when I unmute myself. I see that Dr. Madani has posted a URL there, palmfill.com. He shared that with me and Meditha a few weeks back, and it's really impressive. I would check that out. I was really, I really thought it was a great product, which I think is now launched and in development. And just before I talk about this slide, very briefly, I remember visiting Walmart's headquarters a number of years back, probably a decade back or so, to discuss sustainability issues in the apparel business. And they just launched a big sustainability program, and they started with all the lowest hanging fruit. They looked at, well, their trucks would be sat in bays around the country, in warehouse bays or retail store bays, and drivers left the engine running because that's what truck drivers did. And so they figured that if they just turned the engine off when the truck was parked in the loading bay, they would be saving millions of gallons of gasoline every year. And of course, they're a big company. But then they looked at things like packaging, and could they reduce the specification of their packaging? And then they looked at things like reducing store temperatures, reducing lighting, and turning lights off, and having movement sensitive lighting. And they found that they actually, and they went into lower wattage bulbs in their warehouses, in their stores. And so they pursued sustainability as a means of cutting costs. That was their very first, they've made steps beyond that since, but their very first thing was to, how can we be sustainable and cut our costs? So those are other things to look at too. So I'm not going to dwell a long time on these bullets in this slide. I thought I'd put this in really as an appendix. These are a series of hyperlinks about US regulatory requirements and US standards. So there's product labeling and advertising, there's product safety, and there's importing to the US. So they're just a series of hyperlinks that you can follow to find out about what are the care labeling requirements, the origin marking requirements, sizing standards, as Francis suggested, are a little bit of a joke because actually there aren't any sizing standards in the United States, and those sizes vary by brand. Brands are targeted at specific segments, and they adopt sizes that are determined by psychology. This particular age group don't want to be told they're a size 10. They prefer to be told they're a size 8. So this brand has a size 10 that actually they label as a size 8. So sizing in a way can be anything you want. But there's also product safety standards in here, and basic information on importing and tariffs, and also the OTEXA trade database. So these are a series of hyperlinks you can follow. So
Peter,
next slide, please, Anne.
Peter, you want to talk about chargebacks if they sell, if they have a large retailer here buying from them, make sure they follow the rules in their big directory of how to ship to certain stores, particularly like Macy's and some of the bigger stores. They have departments with chargeback departments to make money themselves. So any excuse, whether it's you didn't ship the tops and bottoms together, and I'm sure Jill probably knows a lot more about this than I do, but I've been very involved and seen a lot of companies who have been financially very badly hurt when it comes to selling to bigger stores, big box stores, and they've not followed the directions, and they find themselves getting charged back for every little infraction. So be extremely careful when you are selling to the big guys that you're ready for it.
Right. Thanks, Francis. So basically, merchandising is the big part of branding, and Anne was talking about the company brand earlier, and I can think of two companies when I think of a company brand, companies that I've dealt with during my career. One is a company called I.J. Dewhurst, which I'm not sure if you've come across them, but they don't sell a stitch of branded clothing. They make for retail brands, but I.J. Dewhurst were, and they're still in business as I understand, but in my time in the UK, they were the most respected apparel company in the UK, apparel manufacturer. It was known they were the primary supplier to Marks and Spencer, and they were able to, meet Marks and Spencer's exacting requirements. It made them an excellent company. Everybody knew what the I.J. Dewhurst brand was, even though they didn't make a stitch of branded clothing on their own. The other company I can think of that I've worked quite a lot with in the United States is VF Corporation. And I think VF is one of the smartest apparel companies on the planet. And you probably wouldn't know the company name, but you know their brands. You know Nautica, the North Face, Lee Jeans, Wrangler, and Vans, amongst others. And they're a very, very smart company. They have, within the industry, they have a very powerful brand for how they manage apparel businesses. And so being a brand as a company, what your company represents is very important. And that should, of course, be expressed through your merchandising. So next slide, please, Anne. I think this is the last slide. I wanted to ask you a question. Why is this not on any US laundry label? It would have helped to have been in one of our previous presentations. Anybody want to answer? Why wouldn't you find this on a US laundry label? Or you shouldn't find it on a US laundry label?
I'm going to say because it's in Celsius, but that's just me being ignorant.
No, that is actually correct. This is in Celsius, so that means it's not American because the US uses Fahrenheit, and therefore, yes, this 30 degrees in Fahrenheit is frozen water, and you can't wash with a block of ice. So, so that's just going back to the fact that the US market is unique in the world in that it still uses old English type measurements and Fahrenheit for temperature.
Still on the inches.
Pounds, ounces, inches, feet, yards, and Fahrenheit. So, well, thank you everybody for listening, and we'd like to invite you to ask questions. Either via the chat or directly via voice. So what are the key questions you have in having your company address the US market? What are the major challenges that you're having to overcome?
We have a big audience, and I'm sure you have questions to ask. If you don't ask, we are going to ask questions from you. So it's better that you ask questions from us.
I think we also, I should say that we're preparing a marketing video for those of you who are interested to show at Magic again. Of course, the first online session for Magic was first for the buyers, first for the exhibitors. And so it was a learning process for Magic. So they're now training. We're doing a session on Tuesday to assist the exhibitors to understand what they need to do when they're showing digitally, and also for the buyers how to navigate the show when they go online. Now, I know that a lot of people were disappointed in it, but I think that this is the beginning and it will stay. So these virtual shows are here to stay, although they will go back to the real shows. But this digital way, think of this as another marketing tool for yourselves so that you can show your online showroom not only at Magic in the trade show in Vegas, but also that you can show your goods online and you can invite people to go and look at it. So this together of this learning process for the buyers and the exhibitors and also for Magic themselves, I think you'll find that the next experience in March, it'll be a lot more effective. So don't give up on it. It's here to stay. And even if you think you've given up on it, it's a reality. It's going to be here. So learn how to do it. Learn how to exhibit. That's my advice for you.
So let me ask a question, if you're not asking questions. Now,
can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yes.
And it's hi, Francis. How are you? It's directed towards what you say. So, what recommendations do you have to kind of learn how to exhibit if you're new to the industry, understanding how to exhibit for trade shows? Do you guys have any good resources there?
Well, really, it's an extension of what we were been talking about in this presentation is merchandising. One example I'll share with you was I was working with a Turkish manufacturer and they got 3 booths at Magic. And they thought they had to show every item that they'd ever made, right? So you went to the booth and it was just this huge mass of clothing. So he called me and he said, Francis, I don't know what's happening. And I hadn't seen his booth. And honestly, Mary, I go in there, I say, what is this? You know, it's just like this huge mass. So it's like walking into the Goodwill. So, you know, I said, you have to have a story of what you're trying to sell. So at that time, I had another colleague with me, and we just took everything down and re-merchandised it. We put half the stuff in the back, and that way you could show what it was you were trying to sell to attract people. Because if they came in and asked, well, I'm looking for a crocheted top with a long sleeve. Oh, we have it here. Let me just bring it out from the back. So, you know, you have to be able to entice people into the showroom, whether it's your website or whether or not it's your real show. So how are you going to get people the traction of use? This is like the 3-second 3-second theory. So you've got 3 seconds to talk to somebody and get them in there. How are you going to do it? And this is another art to selling. So if you're a live show and you're standing there looking intimidating, people will walk straight by. So if you're smiling and you're saying, hey, I've got some water here, would you like a bottle of water to carry around with you? You can open up a dialogue. So how is it you're going to open up that dialogue to connect with people, whether it's at the trade show or the virtual show? The same applies to your website. If you go to the website and it's nothing related to what you're trying to sell, you've lost the customer. So Mary, are you about to launch?
Yeah, I'm the young lady that sent you the wearable ice pack.
Oh yeah, okay, great.
Yes.
Oh yes, of course.
Yes.
Hi Mary.
Yes. Hi, how are you? Nice
Good.
to meet you.
Well, we'll be talking again, I'm sure.
I have a
Anybody else?
question here. Yes, I have a question concerning the styles and the trends in each state that differs from a place to another. So now we're talking about online promotion, okay? And using online promotion, you can target specific states, okay? For less volumes, that will also help our companies to work with less volumes and all what we've been talking with the companies about. But my question is, how would they know if their products are fit to Florida or to California? How would they learn about the trends in each city or each state, I would say? So is there something that you would recommend that, for example, I don't know, let's say Scarabeus or Viva or our companies would know where to target exactly in the states of the US?
Well, great question, Rania. I think that, you know, you'd have to understand the demographics. And I think, like I said earlier, even if you've never been to Texas or Florida, you know, when we were in a merchandising meeting and we'd be meeting with the different clients, they'd say, well, I'm from Florida and I need pink. And so, you know, when people have left the room, we'd always say, okay, don't forget to include your pink and bling. So they like something with shiny, something with bright colors, just a little bit more obvious than, say, somebody who in California tend to be a little bit more streetwear. You know, if you see that whole trickling up from the streetwear. And then in New York, you'll see a much more classic, formal clothing. Then again, you go to, say, Seattle and you'll include rainwear and think of REI. You know, you're thinking, and really you can do your market research as well to see what people are wearing, maybe checking out certain stores in certain cities to see the difference in how they're merchandised.
Yes, in fact, you could, for instance, go to the Gap website, and then they'll ask you which store, which city. And then if you type in Seattle, you'll get a different product set or slightly different product set than if you typed in Orlando, Florida. So you can actually search websites for companies that are serving the general market you're looking at, and retail websites, and then specify which city, because they will differentiate what they present according to where you say is your city location.
Yeah, that's a good starting point, I believe. Thank you.
You need to have the address, Rania, to find the destination. So you really need to find the address first.
Okay.
And that's another thing when we go back to your websites, you know, that when somebody visits your website and uses this pop-up, and they're pretty annoying, but they say, give us your email address and where you're from, and maybe we can send you information, or, you know, whatever. So again, as a company, you're collecting that data. So that data becomes very valuable, and you can send out maybe information about what it is that's new that you're doing within your company. So collect data and understand the market niche. And if you can, fly out to Florida or Texas and drive through America and some of the places you want to drive pretty fast. Sorry.
And I also want to add something here.
I was going to say, tune into reality TV shows that are in the US, and you see all the different regions and different locations, and it's very much over the top, but you do get an interesting picture of some culture in the States.
Yeah,
maybe
similar to that.
Culture, too strong a word.
Similar to that, I wanted to add, like, it's really about reference the brands you think you're going to work with. Like, look on the website, what Francis and Peter said. See, like, normally before you go to a trade show, you also maybe do the research. Who do I want to be in touch with? Who's my ideal customer? Who's the retailer I want to work with? And with that, look on their previous season products, and then orient yourself. Like, slowly with that, you learn so much. I feel like the beauty of being digital is that you even don't have to go anywhere. You can find any information online, even if you're never ever gonna go to the US or you've never been. It doesn't matter, because you're gonna find all the info online. And it's about knowing what would fit to you as a brand, as a manufacturer, and just reference these brands, define like maybe 10 brands you're like, these are my ideal customers I want to target. And then you also, you know what you're good at, what fits to you. So it's a combination of both, I would say.
And really, another thing we should stress about being in business in America is networking, know who you're working with. Again, building that relationship up, so they like you, they want to come back and work with you, even if maybe you screwed up in some way, you know, and then you apologize. But it's built on such a strong networking. And I know that somebody mentioned, of course, the trade shows online are so different from the live shows, which is very, very true. I mean, the live shows are incredibly stimulating, exhausting, of course, but very stimulating. So we're missing that sort of excitement of the live shows, of what's happening and who's going by, and hey, come and look at this booth and see what they're doing there. It's a very, very different thing. So I think, you know, as time progresses, I think there will be more buzz around the online shows, and hopefully, you know, there will be better connections for everybody, but I think it's here to stay.
And I think you also have to understand there are a lot of actually people who are developing brands. Actually, I think I heard that during the COVID, there are more brands have been launched. I mean, these are small companies, small entrepreneurs who have started in small, and they are looking for sources, right? Mm-hmm. So as much as you look for buyers, there are people here who look for sources and not knowing what to do. So if they meet Francis, probably they are lucky. But if they don't meet Francis, then they have to find someone to get the contacts of people, and they have the whole world, right? So what you do in order to, with your website and everything that we have been talking, you know, in all our webinars, so they may be searching online. So how do you get that hit from them as well? I think that's what the strategy should be, that you have to make sure that your product is your information, your sustainability consciousness, and you have to tell this in your website or whatever the media that you're trying to you know, promote your company. So it's a two-way stream. It's not just you are trying to find a buyer and there are no buyers. No, there are buyers, and they also don't know how to find a supplier. So I think how do you connect that? That's the strategy. That's what the strategy should be.
And the other thing is also making sure that you're authentic. Okay, now I'm working, say, with Mary, and she's now looking for someone to develop her product. So I'm usually pointing her to somebody domestically who I know and I trust. Okay. I have had so many clients who've gone before coming to me to people that they've met online and trusted them. And quite frankly, one girl lost $54,000. So check out who it is you're working with, both for the manufacturer. Make sure that you're working with someone who has the money, can pay you. Make sure that you, as a new designer, which actually, Medutha, you're right, it's a very good time for new designers to start a business, because this is a whole sort of growing online, your products to sell online. The retailers are buying smaller quantities. This is another thing that the manufacturers trend that manufacturers need to understand is recosting and being prepared for smaller orders, because that's the way it's going to be. So that means maybe you have to charge a little bit more money, but think ahead and don't get upset if you don't get these big orders, because we're seeing all these big box stores here having huge problems closing up and ending up with most of the clothes which are in the back are now in a landfill. So understand what is happening now will be key to your own success as well.
And maybe if I add something to what Francis said about costing, I know that everybody is really worried about the cost pressure and about like buyers really negotiating hard. There's a really like, if you invest in your brand, what you're good at, if you're more specific and more targeted, that will also elevate your value as a company and your way of negotiating costing. Of course, the industry will always be tough on the costing side, but if you have your like really a target group set where you are really good at and you are also become the manufacturer to go to. So think about like everything we talk about, merchandising, marketing, brand marketing. It's an investment on your side where you all have the know-how. Most of you are many years in the industry, and you have all the resources. It's more like communicating the right value you have, showing it in a very professional way. And that is also changing your leverage towards buyers. If you're confident about who you are, what you can do. So I really believe this is something like realizing this and putting that in the right form of communication. And again, you all have those assets. I wanna stress that. I'm sure all of you have such good know-how and bring in so many years of experience. It's just about putting it together and confidently communicating this and really basically elevating your value as a company to have more leverage also on the costing side.
Do you think in the future more and more of companies from Bangladesh and from India and from China are going to work on less minimum order quantities than they used to have now? Or are they going to keep their minimum order quantities the way they are? So maybe some of the companies in Egypt are not able to do as big orders as the Chinese or the Bangladesh, and this gives us an opportunity with those new brands that are sourcing now, trying to find a source. So do you think the big competitors to the Egyptians are going to adjust the way they are supplying the US market?
Yes,
They
yes,
have to.
They will.
They have to. Yeah.
They will, and they won't. And the thing is, the big orders are not going to go away completely. There are still products that are relatively standardized, don't have, demand is still fairly predictable, but they will
workwear.
adjust.
Yeah, workwear like nurses or workwear will still continue to be in demand, but as Peter says, you've got to adjust, and we're all talking about on-demand manufacturing. We're actually seeing factories being built that are only producing one garment, and it's being made specifically for a particular client who's had the body scanned in, and it's made to measure. They've chosen a style and it's made to measure. So there's one company here, it's on point. There's a few of them being built actually. So this is the way it's going. And so, yes, Rania, definitely. And Peter, you could probably address that better than I can.
I think On Point just went out of business based on the.
You know, I know it was a death actually of the investor, so
Right.
they're looking for further investments.
Right.
And
Well,
I also
would
wanna.
that, oh, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, maybe just one point. I think it's the quantity question is a very difficult one, and I think it depends on the industry. And it's like probably we can't give a general just statement that it will change either or. At least that's my opinion. I believe if you look at the markets right now and all indicators we are actually seeing, especially if you look at sportswear, athleisure, like there's segments which have been growing more than ever even in the pandemic, where quantities will stay high. Then you have, of course, it depends again on your target group and what area, like what's your niche you are in. So that's why I'm saying I think it's tricky to say like only it's gonna go to smaller quantities. I believe it's flexibility and the way you communicate quantities. Many times it's about framework agreements, maybe negotiating that you rather have a long-term contract and you say, okay, we are flexible in, you can reorder more often with us. We need a certain commitment. So I think there's ways of negotiating. And I would say the key term for me, at least, is flexibility and what you communicate. And that's probably the most important right now in the situation where everybody feels a little insecure. Sorry, Jill.
No. That's perfect. And what I was going to say is, as everybody knows, our lead times are getting shorter. Our reorders are probably getting shorter as well. Whether companies are actually placing reorders or just wanting to produce new products. And that's why it's so important to have these digital tools. I'll just keep talking about technology till I'm blue in the face because I love technology, but having these digital tools and having a digital supply chain, being able to communicate with your customers back and forth, having them give you fabric forecasts, having them be able to give you production forecasts, having you be able to take that information into your own planning. And then even with the design and merchandising tools that we touched on briefly, a lot of companies are really moving away from that first sample, second sample, proto sample, pre-production sample, and so on. They are really trying to cut down on costs. They're trying to cut down on timeline to produce the samples. So many companies are starting to use digital tools, which means that puts an extra added challenge to a lot of the manufacturers that are on this call today to be able to keep up with those requests from your customers. And being able to work with them in a digital environment means it's faster for everybody, it's less expensive for everybody, and eventually it's much more sustainable for everybody as well. So that's my 2 cents on technology today.
One thing I want to add is that, we have been thinking this for a long time. We have been producing big quantities quite easily with the mass production techniques. The challenge was to go downsize it to produce small quantities. If you can produce a small quantity, you can produce a large quantity because it's, you scale it up and you can use the whatever the bundle system or whatnot you're talking about. But the problem is, how can you produce small quantity? So the consultants that I have done, my advice is to, okay, you set up, you have already a mass production lines. Can you think of a way to downsize it to produce small quantity? A line, you keep it like a sample room, right? I mean, we know that sample room, sometimes we put small salesman sample orders of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 into these small, into the sample production units and get them done, because you can't disturb the mass production lines because they have their plan and they have to produce it. You have a daily target or hourly target that you have to achieve. So always my advice is to come up with a line. I know sometimes you have to get a little more machines and you have to idle some operators, but keep an additional unit so that you can produce flexible manufacturing. You can produce small quantities, right? If you are ready for both large and small, you are ready for any buyer, right? So I think we have to think of that. So lean merchandising, lean production with technologies, with what Jill said, you can't work without digital anymore if you want to go downsize. So you really need fast lead times. So small quantities, fast lead times with flexible manufacturing is the answer to your question, Rania.
Yeah, but most of the companies come back after the experience of the COVID and they say buyers need smaller quantities, but with either the same prices of larger quantities or less prices and maybe more difficult payment terms. So this is the challenge that they are facing now. And I think it needs some time to adapt, and let's see what.
No, I think all questions have answers, but the answers are sometimes very painful.
Yeah.
And you have to somehow, but you have to do it. If you can't do the business what we did like 10 years ago anymore. There's no way you can do it. So either you adapt it or you just go out of business. I mean, there are two options. So you either, even it's painful, I think the path to be successful is to, eat the bullet and actually move on to the flexible systems.
But Madhutha, with manufacturing, to produce smaller orders, they may want to go into modular manufacturing, retraining their teams, right?
Right. I mean, digital printing, with the digital technologies, modular manufacturing with flexible manufacturing techniques. I mean, we learned the Toyota manufacturing system, I don't know, maybe 50 years ago, and we have adopted that. But I mean, how many companies, if you go around, I don't know in Egypt, but if I go in Asia, how many companies can produce small run production? Very few. Those who have strategically thought 10, 15 years ago that, we really need to be capable of producing small quantities in a fast turnaround time. And then with the pressure of price, because, it's like the Walmart's, dictatorship, right? I mean, either you buy from us, lower the price, buy from us, or you just forget about us. So there's nothing you can do. You just have to live with, with this with the lower prices and small quantities and fast turnaround time. At the end of the day, the buyer is the king, right? So buyer is the king, and we learned this long time ago. The buyer is the king. So we have to somehow produce for the requirement of the buyer, unfortunately. Any other questions? Great discussion. Oh, I was planning to ask a question at the beginning, so now I'll ask question. So how many companies, how many of you have thought of changing, or have you thought of sustainable directions? Have you thought of reducing waste? Have you thought of what if the buyer comes down with the price? How can I reduce the price? How many companies did you have time to think of it? I know if I ask from 100 companies, 99 of them will tell me I don't have time to think about it because I am just pressured with what I have right now. But if you really honestly answer that question by yourself, right? The first thing to do change is you have to think and you have to agree with yourself to do the change. You can't change anybody else if you are not ready to change yourself, right? This is what I always tell to the manufacturing company. You need to first settle with the thought that I am going to change. If you are not ready to change, then your employees and your company is not going to change. So thought for just to think, am I ready to change? Have I settled to change? In terms of any way, any direction, whether it's sustainability, whether it's flexible manufacturing, whether it's price, lowering the price, lowering waste. There are a lot of hurdles, but the only answer is, are you ready to change by yourself?
It takes an effort.
Yes.
So any other questions? So So most of us as businesses, including the education business, are what are called change resisting cultures. But smaller companies can be much more nimble. But try not to be a change resisting culture within your business. Be a change seeker.
Well, you have to change, otherwise you're going to fall flat on your face. I mean, things evolve and things change. So you really need to address the changes. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself, you won't have any business. So we're just trying to open up your eyes and make you think a little bit about what's going on in the marketplace, and new companies, maybe like Mary, she's going to do B2C. This is a new wave. So yeah, change is inevitable, and you have to change with the times.
So I had a question, and which is, you know, going back to our theme in this webinar, design and merchandising strategies. I don't know, I think we've talked about it in previous webinars, but knockoff as a design and merchandising strategy. Could you say something about that, Francis?
Knocking off?
Yes.
Well, the biggest issue is knocking off prints, graphics. That's the biggest problem. There's not a big, unless you're really knocking it off exactly, as far as designs are not protected, but copyright from prints and graphics, don't be tempted to scan them in and change them. And I know a lot of colleges, have heard professors saying you can scan a print in and manipulate it and change it 30% and claim it yours. No. If it looks the same, it is the same. You're going to get sued. And not only you get sued, but the store gets sued. It always amazes me, and I've been involved in a lot of cases where stores will buy a print, or they'll buy a print and they'll say, well, we like it, but we need it cheaper. Okay, well, the manufacturers bought the print from somebody maybe in the States. So they say, okay, you want it cheaper? We send it to China and we knock it off and we change it 30%, and then no, don't get tempted into doing anything like knocking off graphics or anything to do with prints. Being very, very careful about that.
But knocking off is an age-old and still pervasive feature of the industry. I guess more about styling than, but it does extend to surface design. But I was thinking about how companies really get into you know, moving from just being a CMT maker to developing their own look, and that knocking off is a stepping stone in that direction.
Well,
right?
Well, you're not going to be knocking off somebody else exactly. I mean, that would be, you know, no point. You have to come up with a new idea. I mean, there was one case I worked on, and it was a nursing outfit, and they had some novel pieces to it. And this other company knocked it off totally all the way through. And, you know, that was going too far, and they won the case. But yeah, I mean, you can knock off a trend. So you can say, okay, big shoulders are in. So what are we going to do? Let's incorporate the big shoulders. Or maybe you're driven like Mary into developing something because she saw a need for it. You know, so if you find that there is a need for a certain thing, then of course, that's why you would go into it. So yeah, I mean, knocking off an idea is good, but you still got to have your own idea. That's the main thing, right? Is finding that niche market.
Finding the need.
Right.
So, well, we're just about on the appointed time. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So,
real quickly, Dr. Kilduff, I had a private chat with one of the participants, but the problem that we have faced was that we were forced to change really quickly when, especially when COVID hit us. However, I mean, of course, this is a pandemic. We never expected that to happen, but we knew the industry is going to be changed with the online revolution and with the digital revolution. It's going to be changed, and we knew that. We have to be proactive. We can do the business as what we did many years ago. We have still companies, if you really, you will be surprised to see some companies in downtown LA that we sometimes deal with. that who are making the patterns manually and drawing the marker manually and producing the garments, in a bundle production system like we did 500 years ago. And that is what it is. And you can't do that anymore. Maybe you can, as a tailor in Sri Lanka, you still can do it because there will be people coming with the fabric and asking to make the uniform to go to school. But that is not the business we are in. So we really need to change, and change will come whether you like it or not, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's a new technology, the change will come. So we have to be ready, and you have to keep on changing as a manufacturing company. You have to keep on changing. So that's the reality, unfortunately or fortunately. So.
Okay, well, thanks, Medita. So, well, thank you everybody for attending this morning. We really appreciate your time. And the 5 of us are always available via email. And if you want to reach us, I know Yasmin can help connect us. And this is the last of our 6 webinar series. So thank you to all of you. There's some of you long-serving members of this series, and enjoy your evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Hope we see you again sometime. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.